Despite only being in the series for a rather short period of time up to this point, Alex Palou has already established himself as an IndyCar legend. In just 5 full seasons, Palou has already amassed 12 wins and 3 championships, has joined some very exclusive clubs in the record books, and at only 27 years old, Palou has so much more time left to climb the motorsports mountain. To most people stateside, his debut in IndyCar was how we first got introduced to him, but in reality, he had been around the relative motorsports block before, and just a year prior, he was in a series just as demanding and nationally significant as IndyCar is in the US. I'm of course talking about Alex's time in Super Formula, a section of his career that has been disappointingly yet understandably tossed by the wayside. Understandably considering the American success which followed shortly thereafter, but disappointing as well because it's a rather intriguing story. I want to change that, however, because with how Palou did in his one-off season in the series, the writing really should have been on the wall for what we see in IndyCar now. Today, I tell the story of Alex Palou's Super Formula career. The road for Palou leading up to 2019 was a very tumultuous one to say the least. He had raced in various series from 2015 to then, and strangely enough a few of them didn't even exist by the end of the decade. GP3 was one of them, where Palou raced for 2 full-time seasons with by and large unremarkable results outside of a win at the end of the 2015 season. Following the end of his tenure in the series in 2016, Palou had a very odd 2017. His full-time efforts involved racing for a title in the now-defunct Japanese Formula 3 series where he scored a couple of wins and finished 3rd in the points, but along with that effort there were some others. Continuing on with the odd trend of Palou racing in soon-to-be extinct racing series, he made 6 starts in the sad remains of what used to be the Formula Renault 3.5 series. The series, which at this point went under the absolutely beautifully catchy name World Series Formula V8 3.5, went belly up at season's end. But not before Palou came into the series, grabbed a win and 3 poles in those aforementioned 6 starts. Then to round off the 2017 racing season, Palou had a very brief stint in Formula 2, contesting the final 2 rounds of the season at Jerez and Yas Marina. 2018 would see Palou once again race in Formula 3 machinery, this time in the European F3 Championship. Palou's time in the series was pretty nondescript, walking away from the season without a win but a slew of podiums and a 7th place points finish. So thus far, things have been a total whirlwind just to get to the end of 2018. But as it's so often the case in the world of motorsports, things were going to get shuffled up even more. As a result of the open wheel ladder realignment which went on throughout most of the second half of the 2010s, the European Formula 3 Championship merged with GP3 to create the FIA Formula 3 series that we still have to this day. So yet again, Palou was around for the collapse of yet another series. But thankfully, considering his previous success in Japanese Formula 3 back in 2017, he would have a home to fall back on. On January 10th, 2019, Palou was announced to join Nakajima Racing in Super Formula for the 2019 season, partnering fellow rookie Tadasuke Makino. Some rather familiar names from the past and future of Palou's racing career would race this season too, including names such as Dan Ticktum, Artem Markelov, Yuri Vips, and Pato Ward. Nakajima Racing had certainly been around the block before in the series, as Satoru Nakajima had founded the team all the way back in 1984 and had been a fixture of top-level Japanese open-wheel racing ever since. But despite the fact they had experience on their side, the 2010s had not treated the team well. Entering 2019, Nakajima Racing had just 1 win in the decade, that coming in the very first race of the 2010 season. The series had completely changed its name since then, but they were still winless and had even been podiumless since 2016. However, there was some hope, a light at the end of the tunnel if you would, as 2019 would see a rather big change for Super Formula. The Dallara-built SF14 chassis, which had been in use since 2014, had now been replaced by the still-in-use SF19 chassis, also built by Dallara. But despite that major change, coming into the season for Palou, expectations were pretty blasé. I mean, after all, the team hadn't really sniffed success in about a decade, and blasé would probably be the term of choice to describe his results leading up to this point. But regardless of all the stuff that led to this point, Palou was looking to prove himself in a season which genuinely felt like it could make or break his career. Round number 1 of the 2019 Super Formula season would see the series rock up to Suzuka, and for Alex it was about as varied as a race could get. After years of poor performances, Nakajima Racing stunned the Super Formula world by locking out the front row. Tadasuke Makino would start from the pole position, with Palou lined up alongside in second. A result like this made the crew rather ecstatic, albeit possibly too ecstatic as the crew forgot to clear a piece of equipment from around Palou's car, necessitating a crew member to go out and grab it right before the start of the formation lap and automatically giving Palou a drive-through penalty. Palou would come in to serve that penalty at the end of the 8th lap, running second at the time. This sort of penalty, doubly so being served at this point in the race, would usually relegate him well down the running order with no real hope of coming back. But almost at the exact same time that Palou came in to serve the drive-thru, a crash in 130R with Ryo Hirakawa and Tristan Charpentier would bring out the safety car. As a result of that, and around a pit stop shortly thereafter, Palou found himself in third for the lap 12 restart. It was looking really good for Alex, and not very long after he found himself in second, and soon started to battle with Kamui Kobayashi for the race lead. Palou tried to move early on in the 18th lap, but after getting off the push to pass, he lost drive and had to retire from the race. A rather tough end to a really encouraging series debut. A month later, the series rocked up to Autopolis, but along with the teams and drivers, the weather came to the track too. In a rain-soaked and hard-to-predict morning qualifying session, Palou would qualify for the race in a really upsetting 17th. Come time for the race, however, Palou would put on a rousing recovery drive, battling hard to make his way back up to 6th in the checkered flag. It was an overall solid weekend, but one that was certainly tainted with a qualifying performance. Next up on the season schedule came Sugo, which was essentially the inverse of Autopolis. An 8th place qualifying result would convert to a 13th place finish, capping off a really rough opening stretch of the season. At this point in time, Palou was hoping to catch a break. He had shown some great speed thus far, but he just needed the chance to flex his muscles and prove that he was a talent worth keeping an eye on. Round number 4 of the Super Formula season would take place at Fuji, and for Palou, it saw something come out of it that was 2 years in the making. After starting from the pole in the pouring rain, Palou would lead every single lap to take the checkered flag as the time ran out to score his first ever Super Formula win, and his first win in any major racing series since his win in Formula 3.5 back in July of 2017. It was a remarkable drive for Palou, and a pretty poignant one at that. Not only was it a meaningful achievement for Palou himself, scoring a victory for the first time a couple days short of 2 whole years since his last, it was Nakajima Racing's first win since 2010, and it was a dominant one at that. The victory also put him on the map as a Honda driver, leading directly to the opportunity to test an IndyCar at Mid-Ohio for Dale Coyne Racing at the end of July. The good times were looking to continue for the next race in Motegi. As for the second race in a row, Palou would grab the pole. Unlike Fuji, however, things didn't really materialize for him in the race, as he walked away with a 4th place finish. Despite the fact the result may have been a little bit disappointing off the back of a victory, a 4th place finish was still a very good result in reference to the points. And this good turn of results was very well timed for Palou, as it set himself pretty good in the championship heading into the final 2 races. The second to last round of the season would take place at Okayama, and yet again Palou would finish in 4th, this time doing so from an 8th place start. With that result, Palou now found himself in the title fight with Nick Cassidy and Naoki Yamamoto, trailing Yamamoto by just 3 points coming into the season finale. This was a rather unfamiliar position for Palou to find himself in, and the odd feelings heading into the weekend were certainly made worse because of the fact that the season was coming back to Suzuka to bring the season to a close. After the tremendous pace that he showed in the season opener, Palou had the confidence but certainly wanted a better result. To start off, things were looking good, as for the 3rd time during the 2019 Super Formula season, Palou would start from the pole. Unfortunately though, things during the race went just about as bad as they possibly could. Palou would end up finishing the Suzuka race in 19th after dealing with a litany of mechanical issues all day long. A bitter end to a sweet season. When everything was said and done for the 2019 Super Formula season, Palou ended it all 3rd in points, only 7 points behind reigning champion Naoki Yamamoto, and just 10 back of eventual champion Nick Cassidy. But despite coming up short in the championship, it was still a very productive season for Palou. He of course had the victory at Fuji, his first and only win in the series, the team's first in over 9 years, and also the second and final win for the team during the 2010s. He also scored 3 poles, marking Palou as the only driver to score more than 1 pole position during the season. Palou also vastly outclassed his teammate Tadasuke Makino all throughout the season. Outside of the pole Suzuka, it was a brutal season for Makino, as he eventually finished the season 16th in the point standings with just 6 points on the board and best finish of 4th. To be fair to Makino though, that was just about the usual pace that the team had shown in the years prior. Palou, however, bucked that trend, becoming the first legitimate championship contender for the team since Loic Duval won the championship back in 2009. Palou is also the last driver for now to have that distinction. Even Palou's championship rival Naoki Yamamoto, who mind you is a 3-time Super Formula champion, has only been able to amass 1 win for the team since joining them back in 2021. As many of you are very likely aware of, Palou would not return to Super Formula, moving over to IndyCar with Dale Coyne Racing and then Chip Ganassi, where he's amassed 3 championships and is on track to becoming one of the greatest drivers in IndyCar's modern era. But it's always good to remember your roots. And for a rookie in a bad car, Palou's success during the 2019 Super Formula season is a pretty damning example of the talent he has behind the wheel of a race car. Thank you all for watching and have a great afternoon.